The recording has started.
All right.
Hello, everybody. So, welcome on this very warm and sunny day for the fifth episode of the Dare Dialogues. And today with me, Tim Bennings. And
Hello.
hey, and I'm sure, I hope you've seen the crazy funny poster we made for this episode. Um, DevRel, PR married with DevRel, because that's what we want to talk about today.
Exactly.
And it's a bit of a dare for us as well, because we are about to find out where the overlap lives. And for me, having been in PR, technology PR, for about 25 years, I have to say, I think the overlap is massive. But we're going to find out because DevRel is a relatively new area. So,
Exactly.
and Tim knows everything about
Oh, you wish. It's too wide-ranging, but we'll get into it.
that. Okay, let's find out. Um, shall we start by sharing what we think the definition of the other's profession is?
I like that.
Okay.
I'm going to have a
Do
hard
you?
time, though, because I don't really know.
Yeah, but that's a really good start point. Do you want to start describing what you think public relations is?
Yes. And while I do that, look at this. My dog escaped and I found her. But now I
Amazing.
hope she listens. All right, let's go. Oh, she's listening. Nice. Anyways, so public relations. I have to confess that I don't know as much
Hmm.
about this, but I don't know why. Maybe because it's, no, I couldn't tell you why. But what I think it is someone who understands the brand they work for really well. They know what words they can say to describe the brand. They're able to um, go anywhere and kind of give the elevator pitch somehow.
Hmm.
At the same time, I'm making sure my dog comes in. Here we go. Also, if there is a new press release, the PR person will write it. Stuff like that. Does that make any sense if I say it like this?
I think so, but as you speak about it, I
Yeah.
immediately um, think I know some differences between how you would describe what a DevRel is, and
Okay.
so let me try now to
Yes.
describe what I think a DevRel is. So already in the wording, the way you talk about it, you describe a person, right?
Yes. True. True.
So
True.
the PR rep. And I was going to think about the profession as a whole. So would you say that when you say DevRel, that is a person, or is that a job or a profession?
Ooh. There are distinctions in our job description that
Uh-huh.
sometimes it can be a person and sometimes it's a job role.
Right.
So
Okay.
if you are an evangelist,
Uh-huh.
you are a person and your
Yes.
personal brand is kind of connected to that.
Yeah.
But DevRel is so wide ranging
Yeah.
that it's a lot of the times it's also internal facing.
Right.
And so then you have sub roles inside that. But let
Hmm.
me not go continue and say that. What else do you think a DevRel is?
Right. So okay. So let's assume the person. Then I think what a DevRel does is build relationships for a company, a product, a brand, with developers, which is the distinct audience, and that
Yeah,
it will use trustworthy materials from the product, from what, putting themselves in the shoes of the developer and making sure that they see the stuff that is interesting for them,
exactly.
and not the marketing blah. Um,
I love that you
right?
said that because I'm going to be talking about that in a section for sure.
Yeah. Is that somewhere close to what it actually is?
Yes, I think so. I think if you
Uh-huh.
look at it from like there's different opinions here because it's relatively new, like you said.
Uh-huh.
But I think developer relations is doing the same as public relations, but scoped down to developers, and all the actions and things that we do as DevRels are catered to just that. Because
Yes.
developers as an audience are probably the hardest audience you'll ever see. They don't trust anything,
Right.
and they're being bombarded with new stuff all the time that they
Right.
constantly need to check and test. Does it fit? Does it fit my opinion?
Right.
And most of the time it doesn't work, even though it was sold already. And so
Right.
developers are inherently distrustful of anything you say.
Right.
So
Okay.
what do you do to make that work?
And that
And
is
so the actions
your
you
job.
do is like doing a press release or writing a marketing like blog post with SEO titles. Or that's just not gonna work.
No.
Totally doesn't.
Right.
And so I think it's probably the same thing. And I see it personally as somebody who inspires and empowers an audience.
Right. Huh. I like that. I like that. Um, I would like to. I would like to comment now first on um, what PR actually is.
Yes, please.
And then I'll take the view from the overall profession and not a specific person.
Sure.
So what the role or profession is looking to do is build trust with the public, public relations. It builds relations, it builds trust with the public. And what the public is different for every company, is different for
Sure.
every organization, and there are different subgroups in that public. So if you look at it that way, you could say developers is a subgroup of that. And we also talk to politicians and consumers and to, um, you know, CEOs of some types of companies, etc. And we have a different approach for all these areas to build trust with them. Um, uh, Trust is the key outcome, and and how you do that is very different from politicians or journalists or developers. And often, PR, public relations, is confused with media relations.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Interesting.
Did you think it was media relations?
I don't know what media relations is.
Oh, then your audience is journalists.
Ah, all right. Okay, sure. Sure, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. So there is media relations, which is part of public relations.
Mhm.
And then clearly, media influences public. So you have a direct the desire to build trust with the public, with different groups in the public. But you use media. Well, that's not a nice word. You work with media to influence the other audiences, and that's really how PR works. And ideally, I'm not saying that it's being done well always, but ideally, PR steers away 180 degrees from SEO, steers away 180 degrees, no, not maybe 90 degrees
Okay.
from marketing. So while marketing, I
Okay.
think,
Interesting.
is a dirty word for developers, I think it's also a dirty word for PR.
So I think there's a lot more overlap than I thought, but there's one distinct difference that I'm noticing now.
Okay.
Most people that are in developer relations are in fact the same kind of, like, they are their own audience.
Right.
Like someone in developer relations tends to be a developer. Not always,
Yes.
but a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You come from a long background, you're quite senior, and you have done the thing
Yes.
um, that the people do that you talk to now.
Yes. Can I say something? Most
Sure.
people that are in media relations have studied journalism.
There you go. So it's
There you
actually,
go.
we are, so it is like a kind of a marriage there then. So it's quite
Right?
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
Emma
cool.
in Emma in my team has a journalism background, and then went into PR. I have a linguistics background and then went into technology PR, which doesn't make sense. But
Interesting.
yeah.
I wish I had a more, like, as a developer, you don't really learn how to write or speak much. It's a very cerebral thing, and I wish I had learned more of that. I've learned it on the way. Like,
Right.
if you can write a good paragraph, and like, this is a very interesting thing that you might have in PR as well. Let's say there's a new release of something and it changes things.
Yes.
you have to kind of pre-answer most of the questions that the audience will have in your announcement. Because if you don't
Exactly.
do that, they will steamroll you instantly. Is that the same in PR?
Yeah, and I'd like to take it further. I don't think a good press release is the release that you have all the answers to when questions come, because the best release steers the questions.
Exactly.
Um,
Yes.
because you know what is in this news that will change the world, that that talks about something that's possible tomorrow that wasn't possible yesterday. And that is what you have to kind of really put in the middle and make the talk about. And if you fail to do that, then either the news wasn't big enough, which is often the case, um, or you haven't researched it well enough.
Yeah, because I can imagine, like, I have a few things I always use when I have to create something as a
Uh-huh.
DevRel. And so it needs to be concise, precise, simple language. And then
Yes.
it needs to use the terms you actually use, right? So it's not like we now added AI to this toothpaste and it's now amazing. Like, that's
No,
not concise and precise. You have no idea what the toothpaste does now,
no,
right? But
no.
I guess that's so close to PR. I'm learning a lot. I love it. It's actually very similar in the actions or the tasks that you take
Yeah,
to do the job. Yeah, cool.
I think the biggest difference between DevRel and PR, I could even call DevRel DR, which I did in the first place, and you were like, "What's that
What
DR?"
the heck is that?
Made a lot of sense to me. Um, I think the main difference is because you have a different audience or a specific audience, you have to give them specific materials.
Yes.
And I think that is the main difference, while the general principle is exactly the same. You're building trust and give them what they need to understand it, to trust it, to like it, to want to engage with it. Um,
I tend to just have an audience who doesn't do any of those things ever. So I have to show like I am the expert and get some social proof.
yeah.
And the interesting thing is of the hireability of a DevRel or an
Hmm.
evangelist or something like that is basically the social proof that you can bring to the job. Isn't that crazy?
So you have to demonstrate that you can do it.
Yeah, you have to have like it's not for all jobs and like mainly I'm generally in the outreach and awareness side of things.
Yeah.
And on my end of the spectrum, if I don't have a profile at all
Right.
publicly, it's a lot harder to get that job.
Right.
So people kind of know me for my history, and luckily I've had, you know, great luck in a lot of
Right.
projects. I learned the hard way, but I did have success. And because of that, I can land a job and actually start saying things that people trust faster. The KPI is almost how fast do they trust you when you say something.
Do you think that is more related to your profile or to the story and the stuff that you deliver weekly?
I think the first foot in the door is the profile. But
Right.
if you then after that say things that are stupid, it's over fast,
Right. It goes really
right?
fast. Yeah.
Yes. So you have to say the right things, and you know what? This is a fun thing that maybe PR doesn't have. As a developer, you can say the wrong things and go on a live stream and then screw it up, and then learn in public, and go over the iterations, and then say it again, and it tends to be fine. And that
Right.
actually gave them more trust because you're now a normal human that is also a developer that also struggles. I'm not
Yes.
sure you can do that with like PR sometimes.
And that is interesting, because I do really think that there's that difference as well. PR people tend to be more from the background, while you are very much in the foreground.
Yes,
Um,
sometimes to my detriment or to the company's detriment, because you
right.
cannot have one person be the face of a company
Right.
versus the company being the face of the company. I'd rather
Right.
have customers be the face of the company, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think the PR person is pitching the story, is pitching the people, is pitching the
Mhm.
company to audiences, is also pitching the tech experts to their audiences to do the story. Hardly ever do they do the story themselves on stage.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Because DevRels do their story on stage. That's half the
Right.
job.
Right. Yeah. So that is fascinating. So partly you are so what is a real difference, I think, is that you are influencing developers and being the influencer at the same time, while
Yes.
PR people are looking for the influencers and work with them and work through them.
Yeah, that's a different thing. And also what I should say and give a little bit of nuance here, my side of how I do this gig is like that we just discussed.
Right.
But there's
Yeah.
a ton of DevRels that say marketing, public stuff. No, 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 no. I'm going to
Right.
talk to the community in my Slack or my Discord or on Twitter,
Right.
and I'm doing just enablement, or I'm doing just
Right.
documentation, education. I am not going to, like, there are
There are different
idealist,
ways to do it.
exactly, there are idealist developer relations people who are only in it for the human success, which is a very noble thing to do with a product that actually could potentially change somebody's life if it works well, right?
Right.
Like a product like Canva, where if
Uh-huh.
you're not a designer, suddenly you are a designer, you can make your own business and you can take off,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They have probably a lot of people who are in this DevRel side of things that is super educational, community driven, because their marketing takes care of the rest, right? And so that's a very different approach. And I am lucky enough now to work at HighGraph, where we have quite of a range of people, right?
Right.
One of our people, Lo, they are incredible at this human aspect, at the education, making certification programs, getting started guides. I couldn't do that for the life of me.
Right.
I'm a user of those things, and then I
Yeah.
inspire others by somehow micro influencing them.
Right.
And you see, so you have different angles to this gig.
Right. Yeah.
But you know what's really funny when we go back in time to, and this is probably answering one of the questions you might have had later. There's this
I
guy
want to
called,
know, since when is this a job?
exactly, I'll go into that. So
Right.
I think the very first one was a guy called, oh, I don't know his first name, but his last name was Kawasaki. He worked at Apple in the 80s.
Guy Kawasaki.
Yes, I think so.
I know him well.
There you
He's
go.
famous.
And so this person actually had to talk to developers to evangelize their platform
Right.
to actually get people to use it. And
Right.
then I think there's another super famous guy. I forgot his name.
And
Oh,
you,
this
and
is
you know what is
gone.
funny, Tim? Guy
No.
Kawasaki is also considered to be a PR hero.
There we go.
He's
Interesting, right?
famous in our scene. He's famous.
So this person is then a PR hero with a focus on tech,
Right.
which is totally
Absolutely.
fine.
Yeah.
Because then you had someone in like 2002 when Amazon Web Services just came out, like the AWS
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
Jeff, not Bezos, another Jeff. And he was also doing that stuff. But the person that influenced me, because I'm
Uh-huh.
slightly younger, was in 2008. He started in like 2003.
Uh-huh.
His name is Chris Heilman. He's
Okay.
German but lives in the UK.
Uh-huh.
And he started work at Yahoo, and then he went to Mozilla, then he went to Microsoft. And so his type of DevRel is different than a lot of others because he's evangelizing the
Right.
use of standards in technology on the web. So an
Mm-hmm.
idealistic take, this is how you implement an image. This is how you do accessibility. And
Mm-hmm.
in 2007, I think in Amsterdam was the first conferences I attended. And I had been doing the job for a bit, but I didn't know so much. And he was one of the speakers. And because of him, I'm still doing this.
Uh-huh.
So that was real evangelism. And I think around that time he was working at Mozilla. So he was preaching about how to do accessible forms in Firefox, this
Right.
browser.
Yeah. 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 Of
But
course.
he was so epic at explaining why this is such a cool job to do and why you should try and keep doing it. Because he showed a US immigration form. It's like, look how bad this is.
Right.
There will always be a job for you. And all these youngsters in the audience were like, yes, that's true. And since then, like, of course, I would have kept on doing this job, but that really put the fire under the ass.
Yeah, I
And so
get
that's a
that.
real evangelist. And now he's still active and he's great.
Amazing. I'll look him up. I had not heard of him. Um, so so when would you say DevRel became a formal job or profession or area?
I think,
Do you know?
and yeah, maybe not really. I have an
Hmm.
opinion here because my friends in this space will maybe have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll just go ahead and give it a stab.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think when, like, this is the thing, DevRel soars and it's amazing when companies have money
Uh-huh. Product
and
companies, huh?
product companies have money.
Yes. Yeah.
When
Tech product companies.
startups, tech product companies have money, because then, like, a DevRel does not attribute to your annual recurring revenue. Not really.
Uh-huh.
It's a long-term play. It's a
Yeah,
trust play. And so
absolutely.
when there is money, when there is time, when there is space to figure out how do we say certain things so people love what we do,
Right.
how do we grow the team to do even more of it? When that
Hmm.
happens, DevRel
Yes.
flies. And I
Right.
think it has been around for quite a while, like at
Right.
Microsoft for sure. But when it really started really taking off is when like companies like Netlify and Twilio and all of those start to explode onto the scene with lots of investment, lots of people using their tools. They needed to evangelize properly what that was. And
Right. Right. Right.
it clearly started before that, but this is when it was huge. And all the best people started to work at these companies. And they hired all the big shots that were either YouTubers or having some sort of influence. And this like formalized this job even more than it's already formalized. And then you
Right.
see when times change, where buying power, like this is the thing, buying power of technical people is way lower now.
Of course.
And doing marketing and developer relations towards these people that have no buying power anymore will look really bad to boards looking at, hey, how do you move the needle towards our target?
Right. Yeah.
And then you see things changing up. Then you suddenly see product led growth companies killing the free team, going, you know what, you're going to have to pay now. And then half the DevRel team has nothing to do anymore. And so
Right.
it's really up and down pendulum or back and
Or
forth pendulum.
would you not say that the DevRel team has a changed job when that happens?
Um, yes, but a lot of people don't don't do that,
Right. Okay. Yeah. 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 Okay.
right? But
I
how
get
is
that.
that with PR? I
Right.
think when times are bad, you might need more PR. I'm not sure you need
Yes.
more DevRel.
Yeah. So there is absolutely a counter economic move there with PR. So yes,
Hmm.
when the company has reputational issues, when the company has to go through bad weather, etc., there is a clear need for PR.
Yes.
Um, um, is that always done that way? No. So I think in practice, it is not always invested in as would be ideal. I think for the same reasons as you just described. Like it's hard to defend. The ROI isn't clear. It is absolutely. It's not part of marketing. It's not
Yeah.
contributing to lead gen. It is part. It's contributing to company reputation, which is clearly quite crucial. Um, but it's
Yeah.
not
So I
easy
think
to put a price tag on.
that's the thing. And mature companies that understand what a brand means, it
Right.
works a lot better. And it's interesting to see how in younger startups where DevRel, for example, is put in which team. Because
Uh huh.
all the people I know around me are in different teams as DevRels.
Right.
Some
So
are their own
who do
silo,
you
right?
report? Who do you report to, for example?
In my case, where I work now, we're in
Yeah.
marketing.
Right. Okay. Uh-huh.
And so, of course, the angle towards developer relations is slightly different based on where you are in which team, because you also see quite often that developer relations is basically its own pillar and they call it developer experience. So you
Right.
also have like a little bit more product focus, but you're
Uh-huh.
on your own. So you have your own organogram, let's say, with a bigger team.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
and sometimes, like at certain companies, the developer experience team owns the documentation and the marketing website sometimes.
Right. Right.
And then you have others where developer relations is much closer to the product.
Right.
because developer relations people, because they have to say something about the product to developers, they have to be patient zero and try everything.
Right.
So they inform the product a lot from how people use it and how they use it. And so that's yet another angle to it. And people who are in a product team as developer relations have a much more inward focus. They might work more on, let's say, repository of demos that sales and partner people can use.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so DevRel is almost as informative to the company itself as to the outside.
Yeah. And I think that is a next very big similarity between DevRel and general PR, is that you are partly outwardly talking to audiences, but also you are the eyes and ears. You
Yes,
hear
100%.
responses, you see how people engage, you see how people like stuff that you've been saying. That really informs your company, that really informs how you talk about things and how you should
But
move
for me
forward.
personally, that's my whole job.
Right.
I thrive on understanding what happens in the space, being reactive and doing something.
Yes. And I think
And
that
you
is
know
what
what? That's
really
why we do
binds.
this. That's why their dialogues exist as well.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Because and now, yeah. And I think so. When we talked about this in prep, we said the dare would be, if you are in DevRel, um, you might work in a company where there is nobody and responsible for PR because the company doesn't have that type of size. Um,
Exactly.
but it would be interesting to find out who in your company feels connected to PR and building relationships with audiences beyond developer audiences. Could be investors. Investor relation
Mm,
is part of PR.
exactly. Interesting.
That's also an audience, right? And how do you talk to them? And so it would be interesting for the DevRels watching this and for the PR people watching this, is to find the closest PR or DevRel person in your surrounding and see what you can learn from each other and how you can maybe work together
Well, what I
better.
can learn for sure, clearly, is how to take off the hat of a producing tech person. Because that's just my scope is always that. Even if I try to break out of it, I
Uh huh.
start there. It's
Right.
just because I am one of those people. And even in these Dare Dialogues things, when we talk about, hey, what should we discuss? I'm always in this working with my hands producer tech mode. Even though
Right.
sometimes we have to break out of that. And I think a PR person can really push me out. And that's really interesting to see where I currently work at Highgraph.
Uh huh.
We have a new chief product officer.
Mm-hmm.
He's incredible. And he didn't really come from the CMS, I work at the CMS space, but more from
Yeah.
the data side of things.
Yes.
And he is completely outside of the box of how we think and work. And that gives him so much opportunity to actually think about what would our customers actually really need. Because
Right.
us as developers, I'm thinking about how certain forms behave in a CMS or whatever. And then he is like, yeah, most people write in Google Docs, right? Why don't we just build an importer from Google Docs into the CMS? That's probably going to be one of our best features soon,
Right.
right? And we never thought about that because it's horrible as a developer to work in Google Docs. You don't do that.
You don't want to do that. No. One
No,
of
but a
the one
PR
of
person
what.
would have understood that, and a DevRel would not.
Absolutely. Ha! One of the tactics that I've learned in PR very early on in my career, and I'm still applying it, and I think everyone can use it. And so well, I have spent a few days once trying to sell a story or kind of pitch
Yeah,
a story that I thought, well, I didn't think, but my client thought was super interesting. And I couldn't find a way to get a daily newspaper interested in the story. So at one point, I was at the end of my wit with that, and I just
yeah,
called one of my friendly journalists, and I had a conversation rather than a pitch. And
okay.
I explained the story. I said, this is what's in it. These are the ingredients. I don't know how to make this interesting for you. What do you think is in here? And because I just laid it out on the table and, stepped away from trying to make him act, I just wanted to learn. That's how I pitched that story. And that's how I've done it for the last 20 years.
Oh, I love
Um,
that. That's such a DevRel way.
right? You ask, like, this is it. how can we make this work for you?
I even did that yesterday. We had a live stream with a partner that built an accelerator for composable commerce. They're called Datrix. They did a great job on it. I went in. I know them. I know how good they are. I kind of understand what parts, but I didn't know how it worked at all.
Right.
And so rather than pitching them without kind of not knowing it, I just asked them to show it.
Yeah.
And that's the best marketing, because in my
Absolutely.
opinion, because it shows realness. You learn together.
Absolutely. And that is, I think, really how we can conclude this PR married to DevRel. I think we have found some massive common ground. It is about working together with your audiences, understanding what they need, creating value together and building trust for the product or for the company in the respective cases. And I think there is a lot to be worked on together.
Yeah.
So companies who see that, I think, will win.
Well, I think you will get, I don't know, even if there's economic problems, you still need this stuff.
Yeah,
And it will build your brand for the future, right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
And that makes it super interesting. I actually have one question for you.
So last one,
Are,
and
are
then
we
we wrap
allowed?
up.
Yes.
Last
So
one, and then
how
we
did
wrap
you
up.
come up with our poster to be married with children with our faces on it?
Okay. How that happened is I was just thinking with the team on what is this? What's in this story? And well, it's a very PR way to do things, to think about how to make it interesting. But also we thought about, there is this clear connection, and from the outside it might look like a horrible marriage, and Peggy and Al, it was a
Mm-hmm.
bit of a crazy marriage. But I think deep down there was this clear connection that is actually very, very profound. And I
Well, there's
think
a reason
that's
the show is
exactly
successful, right? So that
right.
it has to be something real there.
Yeah.
Outside of the horrible things that they do in that show that could never be on television now, there is a core in there that I love.
Absolutely. And for everyone who doesn't know the show, look it up, Married with Children. And you shared a really great example, the one with the shoe in a restaurant. So if you Google
Exactly.
shoe in restaurant Married with Children, you'll find it. And on that note, we'll wish everyone a very happy Thursday.
Thank you so much for interviewing me.
Bye.